Do you ever feel anxious or nervous if you have to stand in front of people or make an announcement in front of a group of people or do a presentation in public or just within a gathering of people? Now, if you do, then that's okay because that's a natural feeling. Almost all of us have that feeling of feeling a bit nervous when we have to go in front of people or to do some task in front of others, or generally just engaging in a social setting. It makes most of us a little bit nervous. But when you're fearful or anxious every day or every time you have to engage in a social setting, if that is your daily experience, especially if it's very intense, and especially if it makes you avoid certain situations or almost all social situations, then you may be suffering from social anxiety disorder. It's an anxiety disorder that affects between 5 and 10% of the population. Welcome to Reggenerate. I hope that we have been helping you in various areas of your life in the topics that we've been sharing in the past. And today our topic is a topic that a lot of people may be going through some experiences that they don't necessarily know what it is. So social anxiety is that feeling of the fear of being judged, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being humiliated in a social gathering. It may not necessarily be something that the person will experience, but that fear or that anxiety that may happen. So at the core, at the center of social anxiety disorder is the fear of being judged, especially being judged negatively, being rejected, or being humiliated. That is the core of social anxiety disorder. The problem with social anxiety disorder is that it leads people to avoid, people who are suffering from this disorder, avoid a lot of social interactions. And therefore, it is a condition that affects their quality of life. It affects their work. It affects their schoolwork, especially if they're students. It affects their relationships because they're not able to, engage comfortably in that social setting. It affects how they interact with even with family and friends. So it is a disorder that can really cripple somebody's growth and somebody's establishment in life. And so, how common is it? How common is it? I said between 5 and 10% of the global population is affected. So it's not something that it's general, it's there. So it means out of 100 people, 5 or 10 people will actually have it. They may or may not know what it is, but they will have that fear, that intense fear of interacting in a social setting. Now, it is actually the third mental disorder from alcohol use disorder and depression. So it's actually pretty common. Now, a person who suffers from social anxiety will have this kind of experiences. One, they have fear of meeting new people. They have the fear of speaking in front of people. And sometimes it's people who are not necessarily strangers, but just the fear of, I'm going to stand in front of this group of people and say something. So they fear standing in front of people, engaging in front of people. They fear carrying out a task in front of people, or when people are watching. They also have fear of eating in public, like going to a restaurant and eating, especially alone. Sometimes even public transportation. They have a problem just using public transportation. They have a fear of dating. It's a very fearful experience for them. answering questions, especially in front of people. And therefore, if they are students, they may be bright, they may actually have the answers, but they will fear to answer those because they do not want people to look at them, they do not want people to judge them. So they will fear answering questions in public. The other thing is that they may, especially if they're looking for a job, they may actually get invited to an interview, but they will fear going for an interview. They may actually avoid going for the interview because they fear sitting in front of that panel. So you can see how social anxiety can affect the quality of life of people who suffer from it. And so what are some of the physical symptoms? How can you know, or how can you tell that you or someone else may have this social anxiety? One, they will avoid making eye contact. When you're speaking to them, they will avoid eye contact. They sweat, like when they're in front of people, or when they have to go in front of people, or not necessarily in front, but just engaging in a social setting. They sometimes shake. Their heart will race, they will have a racing heart. There are some people who even feel nauseated, like it's too much. They can't really handle it. And so, sometimes they'll have a stiff body posture. So you may see someone sitting in a very awkward posture because their body is stiff, and it's simply because they have social anxiety disorder. So what are some of the physical presentations of social anxiety? What about emotionally? Emotionally, they feel awkward. Like when they're in the presence of other people, they feel awkward. Just feel awkward in front of people. The other thing is that they fear embarrassment. They fear that they might be humiliated when they are with people, even though there is really no reason why they should fear that. Sometimes their minds will go blank. And this happens like if they have to engage, they have to do something, they have to say something. So they find that their minds just go blank. Sometimes they just get scared of people for no apparent reason. So they may fear just being in front of people, so they would rather just be alone. Other times, or for some of them, they avoid places where they will know that they will meet people, or they will find themselves in, engaging with people. So they may completely then avoid going out, let's say shopping or, places of worship. They'll avoid going. So that avoidance now is another thing that they engage in. And they also fear people judging them. They just feel people will judge me negatively. So those are some of the emotional symptoms of social anxiety. Social anxiety can be either mild. There are people who experience it in a mild state. It can be moderate, but it can also be severe. For mild people who suffer from the mild version of social anxiety, they may experience some of the symptoms we've talked about, but they will push themselves to do. They will push themselves to go into those social settings and engage. So they are having those feelings, they're having those symptoms, but they push themselves, so they get it done. And so that's a mild state of it. People who have the moderate version of the social anxiety, they may experience most of the symptoms, and they may do a few of the things that they need to do in social settings, but they will avoid others. They may avoid others. So they may not necessarily be as brave as the one who has the mild version. So there are those that they may push themselves to, but there are those that they will completely avoid. So that's someone with a moderate. Now, someone who has an extreme version of social anxiety, they may have almost all the symptoms we've talked about. And in most cases, they will avoid almost all interactions of a social nature. So in this case, they may avoid completely any situation that will involve meeting other people in a social setting or engaging in other people. That's an extreme now version. That's an extreme form of social anxiety. So it depends on different levels. It depends on, is it mild, is it moderate, is it severe? Now, who are the people who can easily get this? Who gets social anxiety? One, if they are members of family, if they are family members who have social anxiety, then a person, there's a good chance that the person may develop social anxiety. So someone who already has family members who have it, they are more likely to develop it. They are more likely to experience social anxiety. The other one is those who, as children, they had parents. They grew up in homes where the parents or the guardians or the caregivers were either very controlling or very invasive, like parents who they don't respect the children don't have any privacy. The children don't have any. It's almost like they don't have any rights. The parents are very controlling. The parents can walk into the child's room and anything. So children who grew up in homes like those, they are likely to develop social anxiety. The other thing is that if as a child, if a person experienced trauma as a child, so someone who experienced childhood trauma is likely to develop social anxiety. And trauma is the experience, is the result of experiences like abandonment, if a child was abandoned or rejected or abused, or a child grew in extreme poverty. Those kind of experiences usually result in trauma. Trauma is not the incident. Trauma is not the event. It's not the occurrence of the thing. So abuse is not the trauma. Trauma is the experience that results from that event. So people who experience childhood trauma are also likely to suffer from social anxiety. But there is treatment for social anxiety. There is hope for social anxiety. One, there's a CBT, the form of therapy, the cognitive behavioral therapy that a mental health professional is going to engage or to use to help a person who is suffering from this. And there's also medication, especially when it's really extreme. CBT is when a therapist helps the client to be able to look at the thinking pattern, the behavior that may be either harmful or unhelpful. And they're able to help them to see that this way of thinking is feeding into your social anxieties. This way of behavior is feeding into this. So either CBT or medication or both, depending on the severity of this condition. And so the good thing is that there's treatment. And people who seek help usually come out better out of that interaction with their mental health professional or doctor. But if untreated, if social anxiety is untreated, it affects people variously, because if you're in school and you're not able to, you're not able to engage well, it means you may not do as well as you would probably do. If you're employed or you're working, you may not necessarily be able to advance because, one, you're not a very good team player, because you probably avoid situations where teamwork is required, and so you may not advance in your career. And so this is one of the. So generally, it makes your quality of life less than it should be, because there are situations where you need to put yourself out there, but instead you are avoiding those opportunities. But the worst part of it is when the person decides now to use alcohol or drugs in order to help them feel better, or give them probably some bit of courage to go to interact with other people. Now the problem is that these are drugs. These are mechanisms that are not helpful at all, because eventually then they turn into something else. So people may develop alcohol use disorders, probably go into depression, and all that kind of thing. So those are mechanisms that are not going to help the person. Now, anyone who, if you or anyone you know exhibits such symptoms or expresses, this kind of experiences, it is important to look for to get assistance from a mental health professional, because it's not that you're not abnormal. There's really nothing wrong with you. You just need to be helped to be able to deal with any underlying issues that may be feeding into this. Are there habits? Are there behavior changes that need to occur? Is there a way of thinking that you have been engaging in that is feeding into you? What are these things that you're fearing? Is your fear legit? Is it really, if you fear to be judged, what is the outcome of being judged? And why do you think you are most likely to be judged? If you fear being rejected, what makes you feel that you will actually be rejected? So a lot of people who have social anxiety have a lot to deal with in terms of thinking, getting rid of negative thinking and behavior. And of course, when you think a certain way, you behave a certain way. If you think people will reject you, then you will behave in a way that avoids that group of people that you feel will reject you. So your thinking feeds into your behavior. And so instead of your anxiety getting better, instead of you improving, it becomes either it continues that way or it becomes worse. So it is important for anyone who has or who believes they have social anxiety disorder, visit or seek assistance from professionals who will be able to help you so that you're able to live a life that is more fulfilling, and then you grow in your work, you grow in your career, you grow in your relationships. Otherwise, that is something that happens to a lot of people, and many of them may not necessarily be seeking help because they do not feel that this is something that they can seek help for. So this is what we had for you today, social anxiety. If you or anyone else is experiencing it, kindly look for assistance. It will be well with you. So thank you, and we shall see you in our next video.